Alright guys, so this is the latest and greatest from Zhiyun. This is the Weebill 3. Looks a little bit different, has a few new bells and whistles, which I think you're actually really going to like. But honestly, I am seriously blown away by how well this performs, considering how small it is. Like, so good. How's it going, guys? Andrew Murph here from Down Under in Gold Coast, Australia. And if you're new here, welcome. Consider subscribing. I make a whole bunch of filmmaking content and lighting tutorials. So if you are keen to up your filmmaking game, yeah, join the community. All right, so the Zhiyun Weebill series of gimbals has been my favorite go-to gimbal for travel work, as it's just like super small and lightweight and gives you about like 90% of the performance of some of the bigger gimbals. The Weebill 2, for instance, had some interesting features like this little flip out screen and some bigger motors and whatnot, but I still found myself reaching for the Crane 2S just because it like performed a bit better and was only fractionally bigger. But now with this new Weebill 3, from my experience so far, it has been super smooth and nimble. Like basically everyone that I've shown it to and they've used it, straight away their first impressions were how smooth it is and how well it actually works. Now I've been testing this out on my Canon R6, not my Canon C70. There's basically no chance that the Weebill 3 would be able to carry the C70. So I guess like first off, the big difference between that and the Weebill 2 is the payload. It has some smaller arms on it and it just can't handle the weight of big cameras. And to be honest as well, it seems like the R6 with my 18-35 f2.8 lens is kind of like on the edge of the weight limit, but honestly, my results so far have been absolutely amazing considering that it's like right on that limit. So now the first thing you'll notice is that the Weebill 3 has moved away from this R body design like on basically every single Weebill up until this point. And it's a bit more like the Crane 2 and the Crane M3 gimbals. However, the new part you will notice is this little bit on the bottom, which just improves battery life. I'm guessing extra batteries in here or something, and improves the runtime to 21 hours, which is wild. Like, even though it does look like an RC car remote controller now, compared to the original Weebill S, which had a 12-hour runtime, and the Weebill 2, which only had a 9-hour runtime, this thing just blows those completely out of the park. And to charge it, there is a little USB-C cable on the front near the bottom, so super easy. And now I know some people are going to hate that it's got an internal battery, but like 21 hours, like if you're shooting for 21 hours on this thing, well, I don't know, that's crazy. Now the overall comfort of the Weebill 3 is really nice. Honestly, it's probably one of the comfiest gimbals that I've used from Zhiyun, and it kind of sits in between the Weebill S and the Weebill 2 in terms of like height and overall size. Zhiyun has now introduced what they are calling Optimized Sling Structure 2.0 for better ergonomics and less effort, and this includes a new wrist rest as well as a detachable extendable sling grip. Now this new wrist support here is actually so good for majority of shooting situations. When you're actually using it and supporting a lot of the load on your wrist down here, it actually takes off a lot of the load off your wrist and transfers it into your arm, which will be super handy for like long shoots. However, the one problem I've found is that it hinders your ability to go from like upright to low mode without adjusting this, which can be a little bit annoying. Now obviously you can loosen it and drop it down and then kind of like set it up for low mode, but I wish I had some sort of like quick release system so you could quickly just adjust it to go from high mode to low mode and not have to kind of like undo it, put it back in, and then kind of go from there. The extendable sling grip for me is something that I probably won't use very often because the overall payload of the gimbal is much lower. This arm just seems to kind of get in the way for me. But I guess its purpose is kind of like having that back arm on the Weebill S or the Weebill 2. So if you go underslung mode a lot, then obviously this will be a better way of holding it. Or if you're trying to get like smooth panning motions, this will assist you in that as well. Now something completely new for this kind of gimbal, I guess, is the addition of a mic and a built-in light.
There's a light on the front of that?
Yeah.
There's a light?
Yeah.
What?
Now we've seen Zhiyun do this on their phone gimbals like the Smooth Q3. This one had a built-in light on it. And if I'm being 100% honest, it's not great. It's pretty terrible, especially if you're wanting a cinematic image, because the lighting is so close to the lens, it makes your image or your subject extremely flat.
Oh my god, Jesus. It is pretty bright.
It is bright, that's what I'm saying.
And if you go too close, your lens gets in the way. Oh. So you're like a lens shadow. Classic.
However, for just like vlogging or everyday shooting or behind the scenes where like the light doesn't have to be perfect, more so just like you just potentially need some sort of light, this is really, really cool. Just keep in mind that if you have a bigger camera on here with a bigger lens, it may obstruct the light, especially if your subject comes too close to the camera. Now to actually use the light, we simply press and hold this scroll wheel on the right side until it turns on. Then we get a display showing the current dim and Kelvin values. To adjust, we wind the wheel back and forth, and to switch between color and brightness, we simply press the wheel in. It can be controlled in 10% dimming increments from 10 to 100%. And because it's also bicolored, we get a Kelvin adjustment from 2600 to 5600 Kelvin in 100 Kelvin increments. Now being a lighting nerd, really weird choice of Kelvin range. I'm not sure why they didn't choose the standard kind of like 2700 to 6500, or even 2700 to like 5600. I guess like 5600 is a standard daylight thing, so going up to 5400 is a little bit weird and a bit of a bummer, but I'd say most people won't even notice it anyway. Now the built-in mic is a cool new feature as well, being a noise cancelling cardioid mic with a 2.5mm audio out port, which includes the cables to adapt it to a standard 3.5mm audio cable as well. All right, so we're outside in a little bit of wind, and we're currently using the mic on the Weebill 3. So what does this sound like? Does it sound good? Can you hear the wind? Is there any, if I do this? Is there heaps of wind noise? I'm gonna say there is, because there's no windsock on the actual mic itself. And then if we compare it to this is the internal mic on the Canon R6, so I don't know, it should sound maybe not as directional, maybe we'll be able to hear some of the road noise and like ambient noise around the suburbs. Don't know. Now I do think this is a clever idea. However, I do wish there was some additional things that I think would improve this. Firstly, I wish I had an option to mount like a windsock on or something. That would be absolutely amazing. Just for those times when you're shooting in like really windy environments, it would just help get the cleanest audio possible. And secondly, for some reason, when I was using this as a BTS camera gimbal on a shoot, for some reason, all the audio just turned into this like white noise thing. I'm not sure exactly what happened. And then this is with the internal mic, and then me plugging external mic. Does that work now? And then let's unplug it. And this is internal mic, and then this is external mic. Maybe it was like half plugged into something. The upgraded quick release system now has a balance once, balance forever design, which works great if you don't need to change anything on your camera. So the first plate basically slides into the gimbal just like normal, except you don't attach your camera to this. I guess you can, but it would defeat the purpose of having quick release. And then you have this second little mini one that goes onto your camera, and then basically this then quick connects, wrong way. This then quick connects on to the first plate, and that is where you get the quick connect system. And if you're going from gimbal to handheld, this is a really clever system, because essentially like if you're not changing anything on your camera, you can chuck it straight back on and you don't have to rebalance everything again. However, there's a major design flaw in this that is really frustrating. So basically when I was balancing the R6 on this, I had to push it all the way over to the right side to balance that roll axis. And the problem is that this quick release system relies on the camera to be able to move backwards and forwards. Now, with the R6 pushed all the way over to the right side, it was hitting on this, I guess like tilt motor arm here, which wouldn't allow it to slide forward, therefore not allowing the quick release system to actually work. So I still prefer the Crane 2S system where it slides out sideways. I think that is a much better option. Obviously, it's just like you have that bottom arm still kind of like half on it, which is annoying. And this is a much better option. There's just some things that you have to keep in mind. But again, I'm using an R6, which is like probably on the limit of what this should be kind of like operating. So if you're using a smaller mirrorless or DSLR camera, you probably won't run into this issue anyway, and it will work so good. They've also added a brand new locking system, which seems to lock in the axes much better. And they've also added a little magnetic, I guess, what do you call this? Tripod tool thing underneath, which is so handy when you're just like trying to connect it and unconnect it and disconnect it from the actual gimbal itself. But please keep in mind, if you change anything on your camera, like add a filter or change a lens or anything like that, even sometimes changing the battery can unbalance it, make sure that you actually do your best to rebalance it before you turn it back on, just so you don't put any extra stress on the motors. Now, one of the best upgrades in my book personally is the fact we now have a button and a scroll wheel. I know, nothing new, but what is new is that Zhiyun has now allowed us to assign a lot more things to these two things. So we can jump into the menu and scroll down to wheel or trigger, and then assign the function to be something or nothing if we don't want to use it at all. So I've actually assigned this wheel to control my tilt axis because I hate using the joystick. Basically, like with the joystick, I just find that it's either too twitchy, or because it's obviously like a multi-directional joystick, sometimes you want to like kind of like tilt up and it will kind of like tilt and pan at the same time, and it's just not that accurate. And also with the wheel, it means that you can obviously like do moves and also use the wheel at the same time rather than trying to move and use the joystick, which is just super awkward. It also has a built-in OLED screen as well, which gives all the basic information when scrolling through the menus, as well as like battery life and camera info when you actually connect it via the included USB cables. And just like all the other Weebills and all the other, I guess, like Zhiyun gimbals, you can control your camera through this as well. So you have to obviously look up if it is compatible and see what kind of stuff you can control. But yeah, once it's connected, you have obviously all your controls down here and you can do all that stuff. All right, now overall, I am super duper impressed by this. Honestly, I'm not often like overly impressed by new versions of gimbals, as they often don't like upgrade too much stuff, but this has seriously blown me away by how well it performs considering how small it really is. And if you own like a small mirrorless camera or even a small DSLR, or even like a medium sized mirrorless or DSLR like the R6, honestly, this is such a perfect gimbal for you. Like small footprint, amazingly smooth shots, and like straight out of the box, like I literally put my camera on here, balanced it, did it auto calibrate, and it worked so good. Anyway guys, if you did enjoy this one, then consider liking and subscribing to the channel. If you want to find out any more about the Zhiyun Weebill 3, I will leave some links down below. Otherwise, stay creative and just be you. Have fun.